Welcome back to part two of our delicious conversation with the, well, legendary, might be the right word, Jay Abraham, who has been acknowledged as a unique and distinctive authority in the fields of preeminence, exponential business growth, risk management, risk reduction, and maximizing and multiplying business performance assets. This guy has been featured in everything you can imagine, New York Times, Los Angeles Times, etc. Tony Robbins referred to him as a marketing genius, and he is. I first met Jay about 25 years ago when I was 3 and Jay was 8. Or something like that. No. And, you know, even back then, you know, the level of esteem that people have for Jay is really, it's really quite out there. So, you know, in the first part of the show, we talked about all these different aspects of marketing that people don't think about. And one of the things I remember listening to an audio tape of Jay Abraham many, many years ago, and just thinking about how he looked at things in a different way. And that is really one of the great skills of Jay Abraham, is he'll give you a way to look at something that you've never thought about looking at it in the context of how you are seen in the marketplace. And one of the things I wanted to start with here on this second half is, you know, we're all bombarded now. We're on social media. We're all bombarded by digital ads. There's Facebook ads, there's Google ads, there's Instagram, etc. And I mean, I remember back in the day when I first started out in my career, being told that, you know, you are bombarded back then by about 400 ads a day. Now it's in the multiple, you know, tens of thousands. It's insane. So let me ask you, Jay, how has marketing changed, and how do we, as we market ourselves, how do we need to think differently than we've thought before in this, like I said, digital age, but certainly in the post-pandemic age?
Well, I'm going to give you a double answer. First of all,
Okay.
I think the biggest, asset that, or the biggest issue you're talking about is you're vying for attention.
Mm-hmm.
You're not just vying for attention; you're vying for quality attention.
Absolutely.
And whether you like it or not, I come from the era where everything is long copy, and
Yep.
you deeply develop and you support and you contextualize. And today people want instant gratification. So whether you like it or not, you have to be able to at least utilize that requirement as an entree to start the relationship. But then you got to be able not just to be provocative, but to have something you offer that not only do they want more of, but that they do not have a referential understanding that it's available to them that way anywhere else. I use something that I really like. I think I like questions that you need to ask yourself and your team all the time. And one of the questions that I ask my partners when we're creating products, services, marketing is, we want people, when they are exposed to it, reading, watching, hearing, to say in their subconscious, and you're into neuro, they want their subconscious to scream at them, I never thought about it that way before.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you can get to that point, and there's one other point that well, there's 2 or 3 others, but I'll steal apart from my work on preeminence in a moment. You know, I've done a lot of work on preeminence, elevating yourself to the role of the only viable choice, the most trusted advisor for life, and that I have a lot of work on it. And one of the denominators of being preeminent is the ability to put into words and convey to the other side, your prospect, your buyer, whatever they are, what they want more or less of in ways they've never articulated before. Because when you're able to do that, and it's not just in copywriting, it's got a lot more more nuances to it, but you own mind share when the mind says he or she or they, that company understands me. Yes, that is what I want. The same thing. I've never thought about it that way before. And I would commend everybody to ask themselves, is our message, is our proposition something they've never thought about before in the most powerful, positive, and provocative way? Do we really give them an understanding of the product or the application in ways nobody else does? Is there, I mean, and you could say, well, that's just having a differentiation. And I would say, no, it isn't. It's your ability to own the mind, and owning the mind in an ethical, non-manipulative way is probably more critical today, because you got to be more masterful. You could have done it with the equivalent of a marketing shotgun in the past. Now you got to be a sharpshooter from, you got to be able to hit the mark in all of 15 seconds or 2 minutes. And it requires the ability to be able to express with such powerful clarity, but also such concreteness what you're all about. You said something before. You may not ask me this question, but I want to laud you, because when I have a discussion with anybody and we're talking about preeminence, which really goes to this, is, you said it beautifully, but I'll say what I do. I ask people, what do you stand for? Why do you stand for it? What does standing for it mean? Who do you stand for? What does standing for it look like, and how it's expressed or manifest, and how do you get validation that it's being realized, received, and you've hit the mark? Most people can't even answer that.
Yes, I can see that. So let's go back to a piece of that, which is, you talked about being provocative. So let's talk about that, and as a pushback from the psychological point of view. So you and I both know, because we're of a certain age, that many people, younger less so, but as we get older, we don't really like change. We want change, but we don't like it, meaning we want change as long as we don't have to. And so oftentimes, if you're offering something and it's provocative, there's a pushback, as in, I don't want to change, right? So yes, you're right. I want X, but in order to get X, I'd have to change Y. And you know what? I'm kind of comfortable with Y. So I'm going to continue with my command and control style leadership and not really examine that thing. And you and I talked about before that for you, that was a change. That was a shift. There's this, what I call a dark night of the soul, is an awakening where we have that change. And the awakening is a personal thing. That's not a marketing thing. So even if you market that to somebody who's not in the dark night of the soul, they definitely push it away. And even if they're in the dark night of the soul, they still might push it away because they don't like the change. So that's where the provocative thing sort of bumps into it.
Yeah, and I think there's there's two phrases I would like to offer that people can, gestate on and distill a little bit. There's a wonder drug phrase. You know how aspirin's a wonder drug, and baking soda, and there's certain other mushrooms. These are wonder drugs. There's a phrase that in marketing, selling, communication, and dispelling these constraints you're talking about, and one is just understanding that you have to give me the reason why. You got to give me the reason why. And the other factor is risk reversal. If you think about it, anytime any two people come together for any reason, including a few minutes video or audio or anything written, one side is always asking the other to invest and to take risk. Risk is time allocation, risk is trust, risk is going past the 15-second mark on a video on YouTube. Risk is whatever it is. And if you understand what that risk means to somebody, even if they don't, and you have the ability to dimensionalize it even more and then remove it, mitigate it, dispel it, those two things, having a reason why I should break through the barrier of my status quo life. And number two, eliminating the risk of taking whatever the next step, the next half hour to watch, reading the rest of it, contacting us, whatever the related action is. I think you're going to have more advantage and success. And by the way, I don't want to get into it on a session, but just to throw out for you to ponder, I have many proprietary concepts, and one is what I call access denied. And I think a lot of us are having access denied in many ways. When people don't pay attention, when they don't follow through, when they don't, opt in, book an appointment, respond, they ghost us, and we don't understand what's really going on at the seminal level. We're just looking at it very superficially, and I can get, for hours on this, so I won't today, but I just think it's an interesting concept.
So if there's access denied, though, as if we're being ghosted, then we've not delivered something, is what you're saying. We've not delivered a way for them to know that we get them, we understand them, and that we can solve the problem, whatever the problem might be.
Or we don't appreciate what it's like to be in their life right now. I don't think most people, copywriters particularly, really understand and what it's like to be in the mind, the life, any moment of the target audience in terms of, what's going on, everyone vying for their attention, their own hopes, dreams, problems. And the more you appreciate that, and even if you're ghosted, a lot of times you're ghosted because you haven't created enough value in their mind. Isn't that true? We talk about, I have a book we never finished. It's called Relevancy Rules, and it's a double entendre. I got a lot of books I never finished. It's both the rules of relevancy and a declaratory statement. Everything in our lives, if you think about it, flows from a foundational font of relevancy or irrelevancy. The more relevant you become, the more people take your phone call, give you the appointment, opt in, open up your email, watch. The more irrelevant you are, the less they do it. And relevancy is very dynamic. You can lose it. Even creating it is hard enough, but maintaining it and fortifying it is very difficult because most people don't understand. It has a lot to do with networks, not networking, but all the different networks that you have and how you nourish them, nurture them. Also, though, and you and I both know this, with the kind of cryptic communication we do today, it's very easy. It's easier to turn people off than on.
Yes.
So the leverage is negative leverage. So you have to play against that. You have to understand what's going on. I can send you a text and I can say something that if we were having this conversation would be charming, but because it's cryptic, it has no
context.
Yeah, I can offend you. You can be confused, and I don't know it. Also, how many emails do you get a day?
I think we've got it down to about 500 now.
Yeah. Okay. So I get a lot more.
Yeah.
And everyone who sends an email, same thing for me. We think it's the top of the mind that people are dropping everything. It's all important, and they're going to read it and they're going to respond, and we're frustrated or angry. But if you think about reality, the game we're playing is so self-consumed. Mm-hmm. And the more you understand, I spend an enormous amount of time trying to understand everyone else. You know this about me. I have got hopeless curiosity. I'm sharing all these hilarious things I've created, but we have a concept that I created 40 years ago. It's called funnel vision vis-a-vis tunnel vision. Yes. And the concept is you need to understand more than everybody else to win. You need to understand all kinds of things because most people are so only interested in themselves, and yet the audiences you deal with, whether it's your prospects, your buyers, your team members, your vendors, your professionals, they're all having a different reality. And if you don't understand what that reality is, you can't optimize ethically to your advantage, and gaining absolute advantage should be the game you're playing. If you think about life, think about business, it's sort of like the scales of justice, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And most people don't understand. What you want to do is make everything you do go here. And I want to introduce one thought before I stop, because I think it'll provoke your executives and your leaders. But most people don't try to do that. You want to get absolute advantage in everything you do, but you're only as knowledgeable as what you have experienced. So you've got to travel, just like traveling outside your city, your state, your country, your continent broadens your mind. You got to travel as many places outside of your comfort zone to understand the world that you are dependent on, if you're a business person, for your financial sustenance and growth.
Yes. Yes.
Can I talk about something that is really close to my heart, even though I'm going to take you rogue?
Sure. Why not? You're Jay.
Yeah, and I'm a poster boy for adult ADD in the biggest way. So I'd like to leave, and not that we're over, but I want to tell you about the latest. I mean, I'm always screwing around with new distinctions. And the one that really rocked my boat in the last year or two is what I call taking your business profits beyond exponential. And I'm going to give you the concept in a nutshell. I'm going to give you the math behind it. I'm going to give you two analogies, and then we can move on to anything else. But if I don't do that, I will have let your viewers down, just because it's a really great concept. So over the course of my life, because I've been exposed to so many experts, I've learned an enormous number of performance enhancement methodologies that tend to have a greater impact on the bottom line than even the top. So you can make the bottom line grow much, much faster and larger without any additional investment or risk. And it can be done with what you're doing now and anything else you do. And so I realized one day that I had a portfolio, it was 30, which like 90 different categories of what I'll call geometric bottom line growth that can be affected for very little or no risk. And then I started thinking that I was always teaching geometry. My 3-way to grow businesses, geometry, Power Parthenons, geometry, 9 drivers, geometry. And then I wondered, and you're the mathematician, well, is there anything beyond geometry? And I finally looked it up and found out that there are at least five performance gradients above exponentiation. It's called hyper-operationalizing, tetration, heptation, pentation, octation. I can't remember the other tation, but the numbers are like into infinity. And so I realized that if you have that ability, if you have the ability to take performance beyond exponential, why would you ever want to operate your business in what I call the incremental zone? If the same effort or less time or less money or less people or less opportunity cost, access or less, you could do it in the exponential zone. And then I started thinking about that was in the big sense, it's pretty cool, but in the little, what does it look like in day-to-day activity? So I'm going to give you two examples, and then we can talk about anything else, okay?
Yep, please.
Example one is you're talking about an action that either has linear effect or exponential effect, right?
Yeah.
So in a non-COVID environment, when we are calling on people or having meetings, the normal process of gaining a connection to a person you've never met is a handshake, right?
Yes, of course.
And the normal handshake is this, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And if I were able to do it with you, and I can't, so you're going to have to envision. I used to go on stage before COVID, and I was explaining this. You do a handshake with someone, bring somebody up. I'd look at the audience and say, how memorable and impactful is that? Then we'd do it again, and we'd have the handshake. But at the end of the shake, I would turn it like that and cup it for a second, excuse me. Sure. And I'd look at the audience and say, how much more memorable would that be? Particularly if you're looking at them in a very sincere way. Then I did it one more time, and I did that. Then I put a hand on his shoulder. And all those took functionally the same amount of time, but the relative impact was profoundly different. Now I'm going to switch to something that everybody can relate to. So today, almost everybody utilizes to some degree, not as much because they're more, more online, but they use the phone ultimately to communicate. It can be for selling, for anything that's important. But how often, when you're going to call somebody, do you historically, unless it's a very urgent scenario and they know you're going to get this call, how often do you actually get them versus how often do you get literally their voicemail or their gatekeeper? Well, it's going to be like 90% the latter, isn't it?
Sure.
But here's the irony. You're talking about thinking in the exponential, the incremental. If you know that probability outcome, you're going to get voicemail or the gatekeeper, why would I call and go, Dove, it's Jay Ram. I'm calling about doing your show. I want to get on. Will you call me back? And what do you think the statistical probability that message is going to evoke a meaningful response? 0?
Definitely not so much. Yep.
But if I know that I'm most probably going to either get your voicemail or your gatekeeper, and I prepare a strategic message that is both provocative and evocative, what do you think the statistical probability is? And before you answer, and if I know it's going to require sequencing, and I have a sequence that builds on that, and I do that all the time, and I have relationships with people way above my intellectual and financial pay grade because I do that. But most people don't think, and that's the simplest example. I can take it to sublime, but it's sort of interesting, isn't it?
So give us an example of that. So somebody's company, the CEO of this company is saying, we listened to Jay. Yeah, we really should look at how we can do some strategic partnering. People buy from them before they buy from us, or they buy from them after they bought from us. And I think this would be a great, at least an opportunity to get to know this person and discover. And yet that person knows, as you said, they're going to hit the gatekeeper or the voicemail. Give us an example of how to confront that, because it's like, I want to call and say, hey, I think we do great business together. Everybody says that.
Yeah. So, we were talking about that I have a relationship with Anthony Scaramucci that I told you to with. And when I first met him, we had a nice conversation and it looked promising. And then he didn't respond to 5 or 6 phone calls and texts and emails. And a normal person would have been frustrated, but I just had fun with it. And I would have the most charmingly hilarious and unprecedented communication that would take it. And I would have so much fun with it, but I would always build on the last one and ascribe the fact that he was busy and that I was probably irrelevant, but I just would have fun. And after a while, he used to bring me and my wife at his expense to his $10,000 a person SALT conference for hedge funds. And now we're doing a book, but I believe that and it goes to preeminence. It's only a matter of time before you're going to have the relationship you want with the target person, audience you want. So it's just a matter of compound investing, so to speak. But It's not the kind of stupid things. I mean, this is interesting. I was going to tell you offline. There's some really interesting research that most people who send emails to try to get a lead, a prospect, phone call, whatever, they'll send one email, or if they send repetitive ones, it'll always be the very same. Whereas that to me is a fallacy. I can cite with you some profound research that says if you send sequential communication, it could be emails, letter, phone calls, that each one takes a different tack on the subject, you are going to cumulatively expand dramatically the the context, the depth of connection, because you're going to help that other side see so many more facets of benefit or possibility or intrigue. And most people don't do that. I'll give you more concrete examples. And I'm going to go back in time. I got started, you probably know, with the product Icy Hot when it was still a mail order product. And we used to run full page ads in media that reached 55 and above. And one of them back then, today I don't think it's very relevant, it was the National Enquirer. It's a throwaway a newspaper every week, but it used to have 15, 20 million of this profile. And we used to make a ton of money from our ads, and the ads were expensive, like, $90,000, $100,000 an ad. And we always ran one, but we were always testing other ads in very modestly priced media to see if there was another approach. And all of them were usually different thrusts, different talking point. One week, we accidentally ran 2 full page ads in the $90,000 edition of this. And we were scared, that the second one would basically cannibalize the first and be a waste, and we would waste the better part of $90,000. But what we found, which was really interesting, was not that. It was the opposite. It was that the two together that came at it totally different hot buttons. If the first one pulled X, and we were worried that the second one would only pull 50 or 40% of X, it wasn't even par. It wasn't even X. The two together were like 5X. And then fast forward, I wanted to re-verify my assumption. And the assumption was re-verified many years ago. A very large company that's not large now, Nightingale Conant, was in the audio publishing business. You probably remember that.
I do.
And they used to sell very modestly priced albums, like $50. And they created one for me that was $500, which was 10 times that. And they put a lot of money into experimental testing, trying to find breakthrough mailing pieces. And they did like 5, and 3 of them worked, but they didn't work the same. None of them worked the same. One pulled, let's call it 1.9% response. One pulled 1.2% response. One pulled 0.9. These are hypothetical. And the normal default in marketing is you're going to go with the one that pulled 1.9 because it's,
of course,
it's 0.7% better, right? And that's what they were going to do. And I said, well, wait a minute, because they were totally different. The themes were different. The way they came at it, the hot buttons were different. And I'll give you the dynamic and the psychology and the science I think is behind this. So I said, why don't you mail the 1.9 and I will underwrite, or I'll pay, or I'll indemnify you if you send the 1.2 behind it.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't want to. And I said, there's no downside. They did. And they thought it would be a bomb, the second one. But if 1.9 and 1.2 together is 3.1, they would have been thrilled to get that. We got like 7. We got like 7. And I did this over and over again into the same kind of results. And I realized that there's 2 dynamics that people don't realize. Number one is that there are many people. Well, I'll give you the easiest analogy. In the US, they'll know this, maybe in Canada too. If the whole world liked vanilla, there would not be Baskin and Robbins 31 flavors, okay?
Definitely not.
Okay, so what people say is this is the best thing that everybody's going to respond to. Now, if you're turned off by it, then you're done. If you're intrigued but not motivated enough and you need something else to move you, like another facet of perspective, those combinations, I've got things I've done for clients where we had 12 totally different consecutive perspectives, and we assume we're having a dialogue because each one approached a different element in the proposition. So I didn't mean to get on tangents, but it's
so is that like, so it's like you're having a conversation with them that's broken up between each whatever.
Yeah, it's like what you're doing with this.
Right. So there's a breakup in the there's a break in the conversation, but we're approaching it from this place. And then we go, oh, well, have you also thought about it from that place?
That's right.
And about this place. And so instead of it being one, it's this, as you said, it's an accumulative impact and an accumulative depth of connection around the psychology of it.
Yes,
Fabulous.
sir.
Fabulous.
And I'm just telling you, Everybody can do that. And I promise you will be stunned in a positive sense by how much more powerful it is.
Very good. We are out of time, Jay. It's been a pleasure and honor, my friend. I hope you'll stay with us to the end. But before we go, please make sure that everybody knows how to find out about you and all your wonderful, wonderful assets, and that people can reach out to you.
Sure. I mean, we have a website called Abraham.com, which has got tons of resources that we don't try to sell much. But personally, if you want to reach me, it's jay@abraham.com. And reference this so I'll know, and you'll be given priority if you're so inclined.
Fabulous. And of course, we will make sure that that is posted in the show notes, along with all of the social media contacts for Jay and for his programs and for all those wonderful things. You can find Jay Abraham anywhere. If you put his name into Google, you will never get through the amount of pages that come up. I promise you. Again, Jay, it was a pleasure and honor, sir. I hope you'll stay with us to the end. For you, dear listener, remember that you can hang out with other conscious leaders. You can chat about this episode or any past episode inside of our Facebook or LinkedIn groups. Just look for the Leadership and Loyalty Podcast. It doesn't matter how successful you are. If your employees and your customers don't understand what gives your company meaning, you're only working at a fraction of your true capability. To find out how you can hire me, Dov Baron, as a speaker or leadership strategist for yourself or your organization, simply go to dovbaron.com. That's DOVBARON.com. Because here's what it really comes down to. What it comes down to is every one of us has an emotional source code. It's how we were programmed. And that is there. It's not changing. But it's the anatomy of meaning that comes out of that has determined every aspect of your life. It's determining how you see the world, how you see your business, and it's giving you the frameworks that Jay's been talking about that are actually limiting you and making you have these kind of blind spots. Once you get those, it is phenomenal what can happen, because unified actualized meaning is the one single monolithic difference between mediocrity and greatness for all individuals and companies. I want to thank you for sharing the show with everyone you know. Till next time, stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about how you are showing your preeminence, or you are just fading into the background. I'm Dov Baron. I'm here to assist you, tapping into your deepest meaning to reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership impact. And I am out.